Andy Lambert, welcome to the Marketing Study Lab podcast.
Hello, nice to be here. Thanks,
Yeah,
Peter.
excellent. Been looking forward to this one for ages. So, because I've been looking forward to it, I wanted to get a super special random opener in there. Thought
Okay.
long and hard about this, and I was thinking, what can I do? And we're coming towards. Are we in quarter four yet? We're coming towards quarter four. So I thought, okay, we've had a lot of months that have gone. So Andy, who is your favorite month? Avril Lavigne, April O'Neil, or Augustus Gloop?
Uh, you're going to judge me hugely for this, so that'll be Avril Lavigne, please.
Okay, how come?
Because in a former life I was a musician, and whilst you can probably call Avril Lavigne as loosely a musician, but I always did have the hots for her. So there we go. So that's why we'll take that.
There's loads of jokes about being complicated and all that kind of stuff
Yeah.
there, isn't there? Which we'll just avoid. Just for pure clarity, mine would have been Augustus Gloop, just because of the chocolate connotations and who doesn't love that film and the book and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
But anyway, keeping to your roots and I appreciate that. Okay, let's get a bit more serious now and let's discuss your story that's brought you to this stage of your career and what you're up to right now.
So where do you want me to start?
Right, okay. Probably when it starts to get interesting in terms of marketing and content.
Okay, cool. So, right, let's try and cut a nice long one short.
Hmm.
Um, been in sales for most of my life, so that has typically been my background, less so marketing, I would
Hmm.
say. First time of really seeing the power of marketing was when I joined a startup prior to ContentCal, and learned the power of content through that. The power of content, because it was a brand new market, that it wasn't a category that was known, so there was a lot of education needed of the space. So a core sales approach didn't work anyway. So that's where a lot of that was learned, and it's very interesting when you're trying to open up a brand new category because there is no search volume. There's no influencers in the space. It's all greenfield. So
Hmm.
whilst that is sometimes a blessing, but it's quite often a curse. So that's very interesting in how you can start to create educational content and basically try and own a narrative about something to get people thinking about a certain topic. So that was the first thing that showed me the power of that. That business then got sold to Oracle, and I got introduced to who is the founder of ContentCal and the CEO, Alex. Alex owned an agency, was running an agency at that time, a content marketing agency. I got introduced to him just at the moment that this company was sold, and he had an idea because he was creating content for clients on spreadsheets, taking those content plans that he would build, send them to clients for review. Clients barely ever reviewed it, or if they did, it was last minute before it was due to go out. You know the deal. So complete collaborative mess. Couldn't scale the agency, so he came up with an idea of ContentCal. Had this idea, and that's when I met him and I was introduced to him. I fancied this idea, having seen the power of content before, and I thought, well, let's take a risk, because in the previous startup that I joined, it was actually like a UK startup of an existing US company. So I was like, well, let's do full startup this time. So let's go full startup on it. So let's create something from scratch. So the agency continued to exist as its own kind of silo, and then myself and another were brought on to build ContentCal and create what this could be from scratch. So taking an idea into execution. So that was 2016, middle of 2016. It took a little while to figure out who we were and what we're doing. And to be honest, that's a constant evolution,
Hmm.
really. Launched it in January 2017, and roll the clock forward, there's 42,000 companies using it now. So yeah, it's grown, and it's also been very interesting over the last 6 or so months. As the last 6 or so months, the company has nearly doubled in size, which is I feel very humbled for that to have been the case. but we are fortunate enough to have built a content tool for collaborative teams, so it works quite well given current situation. So yeah, not without its challenges, but that is the kind of potted history bringing us up to today.
Brilliant. I think you probably do it a disservice in terms of, doubled in size and escalated because of what's happened in 2020 and all that kind of stuff. And my personal opinion is that, dependent on the industries, and this is a massive generalization, believe me, but it's almost heightened or speeded up certain industries and certain, particularly software and things like that, to come to the front and be better and be more effective, and those that are good at what they do have thrived. So I think, although it's doubled, maybe in 2 years' time you might have doubled, where I think it's just sped that up.
I would agree with that for sure. I mean, there's a few things that come together with that as well, is that we were fortunate enough to have closed an investment round just prior to lockdown as well. So that did help. So it was always the plan to make 2020 a big growth year. Obviously, we were particularly nervous, like a lot of other businesses, because you're like, right, this is our big growth year. You're ready for investment. Here we go. And I'm sure there'll be thousands of other businesses in a similar position of getting fired up for 2020. And yeah, don't get me wrong. Like, it could have been, I think it maybe has sped up, but of course we serve quite a lot of small to mid-sized businesses as well. So, and across, we're in 140 countries across any industry you care to mention. But quite often orientated more towards kind of small to mid-size. Yeah, there's a few massive names using us, which everyone brags about on their website, which we do too. But yeah, the kind of lion's share, it isn't that. And they get buffeted hard by what's going on, and not all of them weather the storm. So we're definitely indirectly affected by that. So I don't want to underplay that. But yeah, you're right in the sense that the need to do this and to do content marketing well has absolutely increased. There's a massive focus on it. Digital transformation has absolutely been sped up. That's for sure.
Yeah. So for those that don't know what ContentCal is, I think it would be beneficial if you just gave the 30-second spiel, or however long it is, of what actually ContentCal is, because I think you called it a publishing platform maybe when you were talking there, and that probably does it a disservice, really. So if you could just explain that, and then we can get into the actionable tips that I want to cover today.
Love it. So yeah, it is essentially a calendar for content, would you believe? So the idea behind it is to make content incredibly visible across a business, right? So a challenge for most businesses is coming up with content ideas, right? So what should I say? So we make that really easy to curate ideas from across a business, and basically so everyone can come together to share good ideas. Then we make it really easy to organize that content across multiple different channels. So not just social, but thinking about blogs, newsletters, press releases, webinars, podcasts, whatever, organizing all of that content. Then having structured workflows that you can build around your business so that you can get your stakeholders involved, make sure messaging is right, make sure all of the content is aligned and fits a broader objective. But ultimately, imagine just kind of, opening ContentCal it is a calendar showing everything that's happening across all of your campaigns, all of your messaging across all channels. So not only is that great for the people that are operating day to day amongst the team, because everyone has complete understanding of what's going on, but for senior stakeholders that you're trying to get bought in more to content marketing, because it's usually marketers that are banging on the senior exec's door asking for more budget for this kind of stuff. It is really important for them to have really simple visibility of what's going on, because a lot of this stuff is quite under the hood. So and I think that's where the power is. And of course, the tool does all of the publishing, the analysis of what worked well, and the community management piece. So like a centralized team inbox when people are responding to your content. So being able to manage that centrally. But ultimately about centralizing things, giving great visibility, and ultimately making the whole complex process of content marketing nice and simple.
Exactly. There you go. Boom. I think that helps to give context to the conversation we're about to have about actionable tips on content strategy and actual content and everything like that. I think if people didn't know what ContentCal was, links are obviously in the show notes, and people go and check it out, please. But I think that just gives a nice grounding for what we're going to talk about. So the first thing first, let's kind of start high level. What makes a good content strategy, apart from obviously using a tool that makes it easy to create and post content?
Point one, I was going to go a couple of places, but I'm going to go highest level is good research.
Okay.
So research, it is all grounded in solid research. Research both in terms of like your customer, and we'll talk about customer avatars and customer persona, but sometimes that's an oversimplification. Like, you need to understand the detail behind that customer, what their fears, what their goals, what level do they operate at? Are they kind of strategists, so they're the kind of at the top level of the business, so they don't need the tactical and the weeds information, or are they the people doing the job? So are you just trying to make a job easier or making someone better, faster, more effective at their job? The age range, the demographics, all of that good stuff. It's obviously built around that customer. Then research also, not forgetting that you should be researching about the search volumes around certain terms. What are people searching for? Like, I talk about this all the time, but like, some of the free tools are some of the best tools, which like answerthepublic.com is something I absolutely adore, right? And looking at that is like a year's worth of content inspiration. It's a great way of putting yourself in your ideal customer's mind, putting in a search term of, I don't know, content, for example, and looking at all of the questions that are asked around that. That for you is your foundation of your content strategy. Great research. What's working in the industry? So I would say 4 things, right? So the customer research is point one. Your market research, which is what's working in the market, i.e. what are people searching for. You want to look at the content today that's performing really well. So tools like BuzzSumo is really good for that. So look at your subject matter and look at the content that's performing really well. BuzzSumo is amazing for that. Looking at like blogs that have worked really well, and also like they've just brought in YouTube as well, so you can look at the top performing YouTube vids. And also BuzzSumo is really good for the 4th part, which is like the influencers as part of that. So when I say influencers, it's sometimes a bit of a broad term, and I don't mean Kylie Jenner. I'm talking about the people that are kind of, you would call them more micro influencers, individuals that have really targeted good networks that you can work with, and that can amplify your message. So that's a way to ground your content plan in some really solid research. So that for me is key.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And it's like anything within marketing, the stuff that you see is just the end result. There's a lot that goes on behind it to get to that end result. And that's pretty much across the board in marketing, to be fair. And that includes good content. So that's all good. We can look at our research, we can do all that kind of stuff. If we move on a little bit, we've done our research, we know what we're going to do, but if you're a one-man band, small company, busy independent, whatever it might be, time is going to be limited, and that's where software that you mentioned, like Answer the Public, BuzzSumo, and ContentCal come in handy. But how do we maximize our content and create efficiencies, because time is going to be short and tight?
Well, how do I mention this without talking about ContentCal? So a key element that I talk about with regards to this, and I will touch on ContentCal, but there are other tools, this isn't dependent on ContentCal for you to be able to do this, but the idea part of, or the ideation around content is a part that it's quite easy to make much better, because what we want to get away from is something that a lot of our customers struggle with, which is like, you get into work, or you sit down at your laptop on a Monday morning and you're like, I need to plan my content for the week. What the hell am I going to say? And we want to transform that by being much more proactive at creating good ideas around content. So we've done a bit of research, right? And that's only a couple of hours worth of endeavor there. But what we want to do is get better with ideation. So for example, ContentCal has a free Google Chrome extension. So that little kind of button that sits in the top right of Chrome. So if you're browsing the web and you find something interesting, just press that button and it's going to save it to your library. Same as if you've got the ContentCal mobile app installed, once again, that's free. Like just browsing on the mobile and you find an interesting tweet or something, you can just press save and it's just going to ping it to your library on ContentCal. And the point here, right, is that what we want to get away from is just, looking at having the blank canvas approach and going, what do I say? And actually you go into, whether you save this somewhere else or use ContentCal, doesn't matter, but you're going to a place where you've got a whole world of inspiration that's already laid out for you. So content becomes much less hard work because you've just saved things from across the week. So you've actually got a whole load to build from, and you wouldn't believe how much that gets the creative juices flowing because you've got a whole bunch of ideas just pinned there and waiting for you. So that would be my kind of first suggestion, as to like making content creation far simpler. Then I've got two other suggestions. Okay. The second one is around building templates. Now, with templates, and this is a kind of ContentCal terminology, so hopefully it translates if you're not using ContentCal. So bear with me on this one. So when you've done that research at step one, it's likely that you've created, let's say, 5 content themes, right? So you've done some research and you've understood there's 5 kind of themes or trends that your audience are kind of interested in. Maybe that's, I talk a lot about like a coffee scenario, for example, in like a coffee shop where an audience will likely be interested in like health and wellness benefits, like sustainability, that kind of stuff. So all of those are your different themes. So imagine each of those themes, consider that as a template, because there will be some topic you can build out around that. So let's just say like every week we're going to do a sustainability post, which is going to be talking about either, where the beans have come from, where, that the fact you're fair trade, I'm talking about this coffee shop scenario again, but the fact you're fair trade, like the fact your coffee cups are recyclable. Building those as templates and giving yourself ideas within this means that each week, you're going to have 5 set distinct themes you're going to talk about, which means that, and you might well create a bit of copy for each of those and have a few kind of placeholder images. But ultimately, what you've got there is like your recurring calendar, if you will, your recurring week's worth of content. Of course, I never advocate sharing the same thing again and again, but I'm talking about like just having, a similar topic you're talking about. Let's say, for example, to take this, to give another example, let's say that, you were a coffee shop and you were just an independent working in like a local high street. Every week you might want to have a content theme as local business, for example. And each week you could do a little showcase of someone else, the fruit stand that's next to you, or, the bookseller that's down the road. So, all of those kind of things, they're really good. That local business theme becomes like your go-to on a Friday every week, for example. So what we've done there through like the ideas we've shared and these templates, you've just taken all of the cognitive dissonance out of it, where you're like looking at a blank thing going, what the hell do I do? We actually know I've got structure and I've got a whole bunch of other ideas that I've pinned together. So all I do is plug them together and we're good.
And I makes sense. 100%. And I'm guessing that a lot of people listening have done a similar thing where they start to bookmark pages and, that's of interest. Oh, it's the top 10, whatever it might be. Oh, I might need that in 3 months. And then you bookmark it and you end up with 400 bookmarks that you never go to because you just ask Google when you need some type of information. And then when it comes to it after the event, you're like, that's where it was. So I suppose it saves that time as well.
Exactly. So yeah, basically we want to bring as much kind of research and ideation into the tool that you're doing your creation from as possible, really. And that's how we're trying to make it easy. But my advice you could take irrespective of whatever you're using, to be fair.
Sure. So you mentioned previously that companies, SMEs up to big company multinationals and the likes are using your software and others. Let's not make this a sales pitch because it fundamentally isn't, but it's hard not to mention ContentCal because it's a really good piece of kit. So let's flip it. So let's say you've got a large team that is all inputting into the same content calendar or software. How do you maintain the consistency within your messaging and your approach? Because you don't want this chuck it on a wall, and see what happens where every post is different? How do we get that consistency when there's loads of people involved?
Great question. So businesses I'm only starting to see do this properly now, and I'm really excited by it, because it's the way that one of our large customers described it as. It's like they created a funnel for content, and they're like FTSE 100 B2B organization dealing with insurance, right? So they're like typically quite dry content, and they've taken a really great approach to it anyway, but they described it as like a funnel for content. And they were just trying to find a way in which that they could just bring all of the ideas from across their broad business to bring it together so that there is some form of like curation process, and then it will get published. And I've seen other like pharmaceutical businesses that have moved to ContentCal have done the same thing. Did it heavily in Trello as well. Trello works well for this, actually. So you could like pin a whole load of ideas. You can email ideas to Trello as well, which is really good. Just so you know, I can talk about other tools.
Yeah, other tools are available. That's going to be the strap line for the podcast, by the way.
yeah. So Trello's excellent for that, and it follows that similar logic, like with this pharmaceutical example, where they just wanted to open up ideas from across the business, like the consultants, the field sales reps, customer service, because we always talk about like content marketing being customer first marketing. Most marketers are actually quite far removed from the day-to-day of a customer, because you can't be. You're a marketer. You're busy creating content, really, and you forged your own opinions of a customer. You might work to a customer avatar, but the reality is, as a marketer, you're never as close to a customer as that person engaging in battle in the field as a sales rep or as a customer service rep, for example. So it's so critical that that information gets disseminated in, right? So it becomes less about like opinions of the business of who we're targeting. It becomes more like factual. These are the things we're battling in the business. These are the things our customers are asking. Love it. So these kind of businesses are starting to figure out a way that they can pull all this content into a place which allows that to be organized in some way and then curated by the marketing team, because the marketing team are the best place to curate that, figure out how that sits alongside other content in multiple channels and a broader strategy. So like with that Trello example, they call it like the Trello icebox, for example. So everything goes into this little icebox and it gets dragged across by the marketing team when they think that's a good enough idea to run with. In ContentCal parlance, it goes into the content hub. So all of the ideas get filtered down into one place. And then the marketing team, no one had the ability to add stuff to the calendar. Only the marketing team with set permission levels would have the ability to do that. So essentially, it's down to the marketing team to pull that in. And of course, like I said earlier, without going into too much detail, and that's where like the approval workflows of ContentCal have become, and it's always been a popular feature, but even more popular in like our current COVID times. You can buzzword to see how many times you can mention that in any kind of podcast. But anyway, that's the thing that's really won us lots of fans, because it's so important to get that right content with the right message, approved basically by the right stakeholders. So that's a long bit of soliloquy from me, but hopefully it makes sense.
Yeah, massively. Of course it does. I think that the one thing that we missed out there is that it includes people in the whole process. And I think we've all been at organizations where, well, you're the marketing team, you come up with the content. And it's like, it's that perception that is what we do. And we're the only ones that could possibly create content, where you've got great teams on the road. You've got great teams in a lab. You've got great teams in a manufacturing process, knowing and understanding the products, the company, the customers, the industry. And it's like, well, you're marketing, you should create the content. Well, no, we want your genius. We want it brought in. And doing that at the very start and throughout the whole process does nothing but benefit the end user and the company.
That is exactly it. And I think we could probably talk about this for hours, but I see this as a major opportunity, as a next phase of content marketing as we start to mature this discipline, because it's still really quite immature. And there's a lot to learn, because the way I see it is like, I don't know how well this will translate out of my mind, is like, I described it as like a funnel for content going into a central place that organizes it. But out at the bottom of that, it becomes even more of a funnel, right? So it just
Okay.
splays out, because content isn't just about like, let's post it to our Facebook page or whatever, but the fact of it goes into this employee advocacy thing, which we're only really at the early stages of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like you say, where you've got excellent people like creating content ideas in the lab, for example, and your field salespeople throwing content ideas in the top, having the marketing team do what they do best, which is align it to a strategy and make sure the messaging is right, and make sure it's communicated well. Marketing and copywriting go hand in hand. They're essentially, marketers become the chief curators, and ultimately at the end of that, the publishing and the distribution goes much broader than just social. It goes into all other channels, as well as starting to bring in like the personal channels, personal profiles of other individuals. And that's really, especially in B2B marketing, where it's just a massive open goal, as far as I'm concerned, is like building that employee advocacy thing. And just whilst I'm on that point, like, one of my marketing heroes, Dave Gerhard, formerly of Drift, now of Privy, I think, but follow him on LinkedIn if you don't know who he is. He just goes to show that he's an employee within a business, but it goes to show how powerful a personal brand is. And he's not the CEO. It doesn't have to be the CEO. It shows the power of a personal brand. And that's the thing that can really transform a B2B business's reputation on social, because your opinion of the products are actually driven through your affinity with Dave as an individual.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think that's done enough in B2B. The whole personal, get people involved, because it depends on the industry, and some industries are a little bit slow on the uptake in terms of digital and social and what that actually means. And to not understand that in some companies is it narrows down the field, and it puts blockers up for people to think, I'm not the kind of person that wants to be on social media because I don't own a cat that never wears a hat. So, I've got nothing to post, and my dog doesn't end up on a trampoline every morning. So, what the hell can I offer the business? Not understanding that it's kind of got to do with dogs and cats, but in the main, it's just about talking to the people that you'd be talking on the road or in the office or whatever. It's just the same. And we need to break down these walls. Like you say, we could talk about that for about 4 hours, but I won't do that to you. I really won't, I promise. And I won't do it to the audience either.
You can say that after we've turned the podcast off. So yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So I want to move this on to a bit of a contentious topic, but I'd love to get your thoughts on it, because what we've been talking about, you could class as 100% organic, although, we can pay for our content, but paid versus organic, should we be looking at both?
Short answer is yes. We did some research with Marketing Meetup, and there's been a huge shift, however, where I think it was 93% of the 527 marketers that came back to us as part of this survey, 93% said they were going to be increasing their organic content output. So there's been a big shift from paid to organic. I think, there's most things are never a simple black and white, really. There's very few things in life that are really. There's no right or wrong or black and white. But like and same with paid versus organic, they're both complementary strategies. But the thing that I think businesses should be very careful of is making sure they own their growth. And what I mean by that, it's really easy to turn off, or just to get on the drug of being like, I'm going to run Facebook ads, I'm doing Google PPC, and very quickly use that be your sole go-to, and you're just sucked into this duopoly where you're like, well, I mean, and to be fair, and without getting too much on a soapbox, like Google is diabolical in its practice sometimes, in the sense, especially like how you have to bid on your brand terms and how you get outbid on your brand terms, because essentially people are coming looking for a tool, but they're being hoodwinked into something else because they're just clicking the first thing. So that is dodgy. But at ContentCal, we have to bid on the brand terms because everyone else does, right? So we can't not appear when someone's searching ContentCal. I mean, I think that's shady, but that's never going to change. But the point is that owning your growth is really important. And we always look towards to a paid versus organic mix of 70-30,
Okay.
70 organic, 30 paid is what we always base everything on. So yeah, our mix of the amount of business or leads that come in, if we're typically getting 250, 300 leads a week, at least, my maths is failing me here, but at least 250 need to be coming from organic channels, because the moment you start to see that mix creeping too heavily paid, you're not in control of that. And
Yeah.
you're at the mercy of just budget creep continually. And that's a scary place to be for a business, because you're not in control of it.
Yeah, I can imagine that, and I can see that, and I always link it to: do you want to actually own the house, or do you just want to rent it? The problem with renting it, well, owning it as well, you stop paying somebody, and it's buy house, and it's very similar with paid. It might be a necessary evil. It gets you good exposure, and we're talking very, very holistically here and top level, because if you're a new brand, you want that exposure. Paid's probably the best way to get it initially, but long term brand building, it's got to be organic. So I think you bang right with 70-30. I'd always advise around about those percentages as well, and go from there. So one thing that I'm interested to get your take on as well is the statistical element of what we do and how we create content. If stats can help us build better content, have you got anything on that kind of topic, on how we should be using stats to develop better content?
I do. I'm trying to think of a nice succinct way to talk about it, because the whole argument of ROI in marketing is, that's a whole nother podcast or series of podcasts, right? Because it's massive. You ask, most marketers will say, what's the biggest challenge? ROI will come, or demonstrating ROI, getting more budget is always going to be up there, right? And how you demonstrate the fact that you've invested huge amounts in, the time it takes to create content, yet rewards are not immediate. They're not like turning on a Facebook ad, for example, and you'd be like, all right, well, turned it on and we've got 2 conversions already. So it doesn't quite work like that with typical content. If you spend 8 hours crafting the perfect blog, it's going to take some time. So that's massively challenging. So as a result, and it's a bit of a side note, we're currently building a product. We have ContentCal Analytics already, but we're building a product called ContentCal IQ, because the thing that we're trying to do is that the issue with a lot of analysis across like digital marketing channels, they often happen in a silo, where you look at like, how did my social media content perform? Really what we're interested in is like cross-pollinating lots of different data sources. So your paid, your paid performance, your organic performance from social, your organic performance of like, blog traffic views or landing page views, whatever you're trying to do. Cross-pollinating all of that, cross-pollinating with the type of content that was written, so the words that were used, when that content was posted, what channels that content was posted on, and trying to create some cross-sectional analysis of that. And then it's what you will be able to do over time is starting to create some meaningful statistical analysis to understand that actually content posted here and here containing the words of whatever it may be work best when posted on a Tuesday at 8 p.m. to, and blogs work well when they're posted here and then encompassed with promotion on here. And, I'm talking quite a utopian view, but we're investing really heavily into this at the moment. Yeah, it's a challenge universally felt. We have our master ROI document at ContentCal, which is a living and breathing Google sheet that it requires manually updating every single week. But we can run some really interesting analysis off the back of it, because we've got like 2 years worth of data on that, right? So we can understand that. So that's definitely going to help, but it doesn't change the fact that as marketers, we think in overly simplistic terms. We talk about marketing funnels, we talk about customer journeys and such, but the reality is, unfortunately, just not as simple as that. I might tell you that something's good or a good product. You'll look at it, click on a paid search ad because that was the first thing that came, so Google will attribute, or you'll attribute that to paid search, but no, you'll forget about it. 90 days later, someone might remind you about it, or you might see something on, you might watch a webinar where someone mentioned that brand again, and you go and look it up organically. So already attribution's a total mess. So they have no idea, because it's taken you a long time, it's taken you over a 90-day period. So your cookie tracking's way out the window. So so it's just super, super hard. So I'm not going to say Content IQ is not going to crack every nut, because it's just too hard. But there is a lot of, if we just put together lots of different data sources, we're already going to get so much better insight out of the back. And that's the thing we lack in marketing. We lack some really solid insight that really statistically backs up the choices that we make. So that's what we're going towards. I don't know if that even answered your question.
No, it does. It does, absolutely. Yeah. Yes. So essentially, what you're saying, to summarize, just to show that I was listening and you didn't go off on a tangent, but to summarize, what we're saying there is that, yeah, you can use all the stats that you want, but until you understand where people are coming from holistically from different areas and what works well in certain areas compared to others, then you're not really getting a true reflection of what's working and what isn't, as opposed to looking at a singular channel and going, well, that worked well on that day, let's try it again. Well, it hasn't worked so well, let's try it again. Oh, it's even worse. You need to look at it much broader, but you can't do that as a human being. You need something to help you with it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's probably just the advice to take away from this is just to be cognizant of the fact that it won't be factual. Nothing you look at in marketing is absolute fact, and just be very cognizant of that, and just challenge your expectations or challenge your perceptions of something, because it's all best guess. And you will be able to look at stuff, and you will be able to see why something worked well on LinkedIn, but there's nothing to say that it's going to work well the next week, really.
Yeah.
It's a good estimation, but depending on how the algorithm's feeling that day, it might well have a different opinion. So because it's subject to continual tweaks. So the best thing you can do is look at you have to look at still in silos of information, make the best possible decisions with the information that you've got at hand, because that's all we can do. Be cognizant of the fact that constantly challenge your own perceptions of stuff, and just go, will it work? It might work, because we're all trying to evolve this, and it's still so new. Facebook might have existed since 2005 or 6, can't remember now, or 7, don't know. But either way, content marketing, that's still fairly new as an industry. So yeah, there's still a long way for us to go as marketers to really understand that properly.
See, I just keep it simple, and I just place a small ad in the local free newspaper, and so I know where exactly all my 0 leads come from. It's it works well for me because my tracking is perfect.
That's exactly it. So I mean, to be fair, I mean, and that's a really good point, because I talk about this sometimes. I sometimes forget other people's context, because I'm talking about the fact that we're a software company, and we are multi-channel, so we are as many places as we can possibly be. So it's become very, very difficult to track. So for not all businesses isn't as hard as that. But if you cut through the noise of everything, right, and outside of all marketing attribution, all that kind of stuff, and you speak to the founders of massive software companies like Slack, you ask them, what's the biggest channel and what's the best channel for you? They'll go, word of mouth.
Yep. Yeah. I can't remember whether it was the previous podcast I recorded or one. Anyway, I was talking to somebody and saying it's the biggest con in marketing. You ask any decent marketer what the best possible channel is, and it's people talking about you and word of mouth. The problem with that is it's got very little to do with us. We can't control it, and really we've got nothing to do with it other than instigating it at the very, very start. And where that started, who knows, because no one's going to tell us. So it's the biggest con in marketing, to be fair.
It is absolutely fascinating. It really is. And I think probably just a practical bit of advice, and I think one of the best things we did when we started ContentCal in the early days is every one of our first customers, every single one we took on, we would ask them if they had a blog to write a review of us, if they didn't, to review us on one of the review sites, because there's a load out there. So it becomes a compounding effect. So, you know, you're building reputation as you go. And I think that served us really, really well. Of course, you've got to live and breathe your reputation, but you know, that social proof element is absolutely huge. So that's just my kind of actionable bit.
Yeah, cool. I like it. Yeah, I mean, that's probably the one part of word of mouth that you have slight control over. The whole review, can you leave us a comment, that type of thing. But even then, you don't want to go down to the route of, can I write you this thing that I'm talking about my company, and can you just put your name to it and just post it here, there, and every. It's like, no, well, that isn't just that. Again, that goes back to being false and all that kind of stuff. So okay, so I think that's a nice way to wind it up. Are you ready for some quick fire questions?
Oh, go on then.
Brilliant. What was the last thing you remember Googling?
What was the last thing oh my word. Hold on. I Googled something this morning.
It's weird, isn't it? We use it all the time, but we can't remember the last thing we asked.
That is madness. I actually can't remember. I genuinely can't remember. I'm sorry.
That's fine. No problem at all. You're not the first person to say that. What's the most important thing to know about marketing right now?
Beware your reputation. Your reputation is everything. We don't talk about enough in marketing. We talk about branding lots, but realizing that, especially from from any business perspective, your reputation is absolutely everything. And the way that your reputation is forged is typically by how people perceive you in your content channels. Mm-hmm. So be wary.
Cool. Why do you love what you do?
The bit I love most about what we do, especially at ContentCal, is everything we're doing around our academy at the moment, because rather than building a software company that's used by thousands of people, which all sounds well and good, I absolutely adore the fact of helping people become better marketers. Because you won't often hear a software company person say this, but I will, is that whilst our product will make you faster at what you do, it won't make you better. So,
damn it.
Yeah. So I'm really keen on like how we can make people better marketers, and why obviously you and I get on quite well, and obviously why we have a shared appreciation of our friend Joe Glover of the Marketing Meetup. So
yeah, hats off, Joe.
Education is the thing that really fires me up.
Definitely. I think if you are a marketer, you have to have that in your belly to want to educate and learn and develop continuously, because if you don't, you're going to be left behind. Yeah, fundamentals, principles, they remain the same and will forever remain the same. But the things we've been talking about today, the channels, how you get good content, how you find good content, what you should be talking about, what channels you use, that is forever changing. And those are the bits we need to keep educating ourselves about. Okay, final question, most important. And Andy, I must confess that you're going to have to tell people you work for ContentCal in this bit, probably, because you might give your email address away or find you on LinkedIn. But if people didn't know that, Andy Lambert from ContentCal, if people want to find out more about what you do or the company you work for, maybe, where are you pointing them?
So you can head to our website, contentcal.io. I love content marketing orientated questions. I try and get back to everyone. So you can find me on LinkedIn is my thing. So just search Andy Lambert. And I'm the one that looks a lot younger than I do now in my photo. So
that is a lie. I thought when I first saw your photo, I thought that is a young Tom Selleck.
Oh, he's my childhood hero, so I'm going to take that.
Yes, brilliant, superb, love it. Right, Andy, thank you so much for joining me today. Absolute pleasure.
Love it. Thanks so much, Peter.